What's up, everybody? It's Ghoul here. People seem to be enjoying these videos, so I figured I would go ahead and keep doing them. So, a new set comes out, I think next week, and being as the Earth, Wind, Storm guy, or one of them, I figured I'd go over some of the new cards in the set that I think could end up being in a Storm deck. Of note, really don't think my deck is going to change very much. I think a lot of the cards are kind of side grades, maybe useful in other places. But we're going to go card by card on a couple of these. I've got like a pre-curated selection. I'll go over which ones I think are interesting. First things first, Matoya. It's a 4-drop Earth backup, job Witch, category 1, none of which matters. What does matter was that when she enters the field, she can either be a Kusith and add a character back from your break zone. She can either be Miss Dragon and remove all cards in your opponent's break zone from the game, or you can pay 4 CP when she enters, and she's Titan with infinite power. All of these modes are good, and all of them are valuable in different situations. The first effect means that she's a 2-drop backup, but she's the first backup you draw, which is very valuable. The second effect is very, very good in late game situations, and Earth, Wind, Storm always needs more board wipes. The main downsides to this card are, first of all, that it's an Earth backup. You really want your extra backups to be Wind if possible, because it tends just to be better to have more Wind backups than Earth ones. Especially because with cards like Bismarck, it's very hard to remove Earth backups because you can't break them yourself with any card in the current build of the deck that I have. So for that reason, I think she's a pretty solid one of, maybe in one of a couple different slots. If you wanted to go for like a 2 CP Legend Rydia as opposed to the Rydia backup. Definitely a lot of interesting spots for this card. I would not be surprised to see it show up in my list towards the end of the set. Next card on the list, we have Shadow Lord. When Shadow Lord enters the field, you name a job. You break every forward with that job and the job standard unit. If 3 or more forwards die from it, you take a point of damage. And then damage 5, he becomes a 9k Brave that also is dark instead of Earth. This is kind of like another, like the easy comparison is Titan, Lord of Crags. They're both 7-drop 9ks that have a board wipe effect on them. Shadow Lord is going to be great in matchups that Titan might not be. Something like Samurais comes to mind, and Avalanche Operatives is one that people will think of. The two big downsides are, I think it gets good stuff piles. Shadow Lord is going to be maybe like you get 2 jobs off the field. You know, if you're in the mirror, maybe you like pop their Rosa by declaring White Mage, but you're not getting anything else. If you declare Thief, you're only getting a Zidane. So like this is good against like archetypal decks and anything that's trying to do that. Something like Ice, if it's heavy on the Knights package, you could pop those. Turks, which might actually get a big boost this set, would be a good one to hit with this. The Guardian deck would be good. And I like the taking a point of damage because being able to get to damage 3 is really, really critical. It's one of the reasons where I even put in the single copy of Cactuar. Just getting to damage 3 and turning on so much of the text on your cards is massively important. That said, the damage 5 I kind of hate. Like, sure, a 10k Brave is really nice, but now you have this weird problem where there still is like room for a light or dark card. I'm not running one at the moment. And Shadow Lord starts like conflicting with it at that point. Like you could still play Shadow Lord, but it'll instantly blow itself and your light card up at the same time, which is, don't really know how I feel about that. Like it's like if you don't have a light card in the deck, there's no downside to that, but if you do, it becomes very, very iffy. Even something like Kadaj, something like Lightning. There's a lot of interesting cards you could play in a dark or a light slot that Shadow Lord all of a sudden becomes a dead card later on. I think probably at the start of the Opus, I'm going to try 1 Titan, 1 Shadow Lord, with the idea being that I can Tyro for the one that I need in a specific matchup. One other thing to note, this is category 11, so if you run Star Sybil, this is another searchable board wipe if you don't want to get Shantota or can't search the Shantota. But yeah, interesting card. Again, I think like 1 Titan, 1 Shadow Lord could end up being correct. Maybe even 2 Titan, 1 Shadow Lord. I think Titan's just more generic. Most decks that are going to try to rush you down are going to probably throw a bunch of weenies out that Titan can deal with. But definitely a good card if something like, again, Samurais, Avalanche, any of those are really prominent in your area. This is going to be a better card for those matchups. So now we get to the wind side. Wind, really, I don't think it's a big boost in the deck. I'm going to be honest. So, first card is Null. Null is a bit strange, so when he attacks, you remove it from the game. Beginning of the next main phase 1, he comes back to the field. And then if whenever he returns, you either can break a 4 or higher character, do a point of damage, or search for any forward in your deck. And then at damage 3, he gets haste. So what Null can do is kind of function as like a pseudo Kadaj or a tempo tool. The downside is it's only every other turn until you're on damage 3. And there's so much in the deck that relies on damage 3 that adding another damage 3 card, even one that's such a good tempo tool as this, is a little scary. So I think the card is very strong. I think there's a good chance it sees play in a lot of decks. I think like something like the Water Wind Unblockables deck is going to love the ability to both either be a tempo play or search for a forward or deal a point of damage depending on what happens. I probably, if I was to add this in, I would go down like 1 copy of Zidane and try Null in the deck at 1 and just see how it feels. If you find that it comes up a lot, maybe you start bumping it up and bumping it up and bumping it up. But until then, I think this one's a little bit iffy, but it's an interesting card. It's one that I think has some potential. Luso, this is the most obvious Storm card in the set. When he enters the field, if you cast 3 cards, you draw a card. If he enters the field and you've done 7, you also get to do 8,000 damage to all the opponents, forward opponent controls. So for Icewind, that second effect is pretty solid. I would say nuts, but like you do also kind of have Barley, and if you have 7 casts, you've probably done 6 to 9k with Barley already. In Earthwind, 7 casts is a lot harder to get to. Now that said, that first effect is extremely easy. Just 3 casts, Luso draws you a card. It's instant card advantage. It can help you get to your 5th cast on Rosa. Maybe it helps you get to your lock plays, just kind of refunds itself in hand. Like that's a pretty strong effect. I don't know if I'm going to run this one in Earthwind to start. Like I said, every one of these cards I'll probably try out at least a little bit, see how they feel. I think this one's a little bit fragile to play, and I just don't really know where the deck space for the card comes from. Again, there's like nice things. You can bounce this. It's a pretty good target for something like Bismarck to bounce, give you that perpetual advantage. It's easy to cast on your next turn, get your cast count up, get you another card to hand. But yeah, outside of that, like I said, the 7 cast gives you another board wipe option. But if you cast 7 cards, kind of don't really need a board wipe at that point. You're probably already like cast lock twice, maybe 3 times. Their whole field should be in shambles. Rosa would have hit her 5th cast trigger. You've probably had your cryo pop off. Like, it's a good effect. It's just so win more that I don't really see it making room in the deck, because it's not really what the deck needs. All you really want is anti-aggression and more payoffs, and I don't really know that Luso adds enough to either of those to be worth a slot, but it is cheap, it is easy, and it will probably see some play, especially in Icewind, where they tend to index heavier into draw power. But in Earthwind, I find that you, instead of just drawing the cards, you search them. So Chocobo, this is a 1-drop summon, top 3 cards, add a character, the others to the bottom of the deck in any order. This card is just good. A card named Chocobo is extremely relevant. If you run cards like Chocobo Sam, you can search this because this is card named Chocobo. The EX burst puts in a lot of heavy lifting here. I think one of the strongest things that people underrate is just any EX burst that draws you a card. I think there's a non-zero chance to seize play in Earthwind as well. Just 1-drop, top 3, find a character, keep going. This is really good with stuff like if you haven't found your Nordstalin, but you have any wind backup, you can kind of go turn 1, play something, turn 2, play Chocobo, dig 3 cards deeper, find the Nordstalin that you're missing, play the Nordstalin, and kind of be off to the races. But again, the EX burst really does a lot of heavy lifting here. The biggest problem with this is just going to be finding room for it. Again, this is also a great Kryl target. Kryl, player down for 2, that's 1 cast. You cast this for another, that's 2 casts for 3 CP. Plus, you've just replaced the Kryl in hand, so you can potentially do more. Always a nice thing. Sid Paladina, this is a Category 4 searcher, so given that Rosa is one of the best cards in the deck, this probably goes in at 1 potentially, just to be a searcher for that. I've experimented with Brother in the past as a Category 10 searcher to get either Yuna or Lulu. Rosa's a lot more integral to the deck than those are. That said, I don't really know that there's another Category 4 character. Category 4 forward specifically. This can't go like Sid Paladina into Rydia backup and your color fixed. So I will say if you're on either Cecil as a protection effect or the 2-drop Legend of Rydia, this card is crazy. Very good value for those. If you have like 1 Cecil, 2 Rydia, and a Rosa, you can kind of just get whatever you need out of the deck with this card. Definitely one to keep an eye on. Definitely a nice little common for sure. One last card I do want to bring up is Edward. If you're in Icewind, this goes in your deck at 2 copies. It's basically now almost as good as Chocolate, I think, as far as like just random utility. If you get like 2 reactivations on your opponent's turn, 1 for Chocolate, 1 for Edward. Edward also kind of becomes this cool thing where your opponent no longer gets... You can just threaten Edward and your opponent can't do anything with their break zone anymore. Like, they play a Kryl on the stack, you Edward away the Kryl's summon. Madame Edel, rip the target for Edel out of the break zone. 1 CP to remove a card from your opponent's break zone is just an incredible rate, especially at instant speed. There's no restrictions on being your turn or your opponent's turn. This card's just really good. So definitely, if you ever see a foil copy of this card, this is going to be one of the better foil commons out of the set. Lastly, let's go over just the last little bits of cards that I think have a chance to be relevant from the set. Kelger functions as an anti-aggression tool against specifically big decks. The downside is I really don't think Earthwind Storm wants a 4-drop beat stick. It's a really good beat stick, but it's not a beat. Like, beat sticks aren't what the deck is about. In Icewind, Sarah, if you can go for a mono Moogle backup line, maybe something like the new Hurdy. You can go something like some copy of Mog 13. You can go for the class Moogle. Let's see. You can even consider the Mog FFCC. This is a 5-drop that can get you a backup and then perpetual value if you can do it, which I think is really powerful. Again, like a lot of what we're doing is looking to scale and get anti-aggression up. Sarah can do that. Downside is I don't know that you really want to run a mono Moogle backup line, even in Icewind. There's just too many good cards. You'd be trying to find replacements for stuff like Nordstalin, and I think the hit rate goes too low if you're not running at least 12 Moogle backups for this card. Definitely want to keep an eye on, but I think it's a legend that just doesn't quite fit in the deck. The Baron Soldier, this is a standard unit, 3-drop. You pay an extra 1 when it enters. You can remove all cards of 1 type from your opponent's break zone. Break zone hate's always good. It's a little bit expensive, but, definitely not the worst. Titan potentially is a decent one of. Just make your whole field really big to avoid something like a board wipe. I think your opponent plays like something like a Susano on the turn before you push to lethal. Could prevent you from having to rebuild your board. Also gives us you hate against something like a Tenzin. 3-drop to kill Tenzin. Some pretty solid cost for that effect. Arciella, this is nice as more kind of breaks own hate. Also can end up doing, protecting something like your Rosa, any of your perpetual value cards. Kryl ends up being a magnet for destruction effects. Arciella can kind of just give you that little bit of extra protection. I think it could be a really solid one of for sure. Dancer, I want this card to be good. I just like it doesn't fully refund itself unless you have Tilica on the field. And if you're not fully refunding yourself, why are you not playing extra copies of something like Yuna? Like, there's just so many other cards that you could play that reactivate your backups that I really don't know why you would go for Dancer if you have the option. Granted, she is a standard unit. Maybe if you wanted to go for 3 of it. But remains to be seen. I think that the whole line of standard units is a little bit of a bust. Same for the Baron Soldier. But it is a card that reactivates backups. You can't really underestimate that. And like the action ability at damage 3 is not bad. Like 1000 power isn't like crazy, but maybe you get like your cards. You get like a Kryl over a Brynhildr, for instance. Like there's situations where it would come up, and it doesn't require it to dull a different dancer, so she can do herself. Lastly, bit of a strange one, but keep an eye on the Emperor. So the downside of this card is it's going to be a Garnet City. You have to run 3 copies of it. If you draw any of them before you play it, the card becomes significantly worse, and it will gum the crap out of your hand up. However, if 2 of the copies stay in the deck, you could do something like turn 1, play Norstalin, search Fiona. Turn 2, play the Fiona, play the Emperor, banish the other 2 copies of the Emperor. You now have 2 fewer cards in your deck. You have a big 9k beat stick that resists destruction twice, and you've also drawn 2 cards. So you've cycled 2 maybe dead summons, maybe like a Lulu that you're just not ready to play out of your hand, and you're drawing fresh new cards. I think this might actually be very, very good as a deep draw engine. You know, a deep draw / anti-aggression. The downside is you gotta run 3. If you open 2, you have to immediately mulligan. So those hands where you open 2 of this plus a Norstalin, well, sorry that Norstalin goes to the bottom of the deck now. Definitely an interesting card. I think it has potential. I'm just not sure how worth it it's going to be to play 3 copies of a dark card that as soon as you see it, you're obligated to play it in case you draw extra copies of it. If there ever becomes a way to like swap a card in your hand with a card in your deck, this becomes a much more interesting option. Just get the... In Yu-Gi-Oh! The term is a Garnet, which is a card that is live in the deck and dead in your hand. And Emperor is a card that, as an engine, requires 2. Like, the other copies of itself are Garnets. And that's it. That's what I've got. So, I don't think the deck's going to change too much. I think that the way that I have the deck currently constructed is extremely powerful and extremely good, but definitely think that at least Matoya and Shadow Lord will probably find a room in the deck somewhere. And I think that the couple of these are definitely interesting. Like I said, I might make room for 1 Chocobo and try it out for a little while, just to see if it increases the speed of the deck at all. So yeah, that's basically it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe at some point I'll do a full set review, but I also want to do like a top 10 cards that I'm most excited for. Maybe not necessarily even like the top 10 best cards, because I don't know if that's necessarily true, but there's a lot of really interesting and really powerful cards in the set, even beyond like what I think is good. So we'll go into that on the future, but let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe. Feel free to comment if you disagree on any of these, if I'm underestimating anything, if you're like super sold that no, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Luso because immediate card draw is so much better than like end of turn card draw with like the Ash would be or something. So yeah, thanks for watching.